Yes. Hi, Meg. Nice to meet you virtually and to be here. My name is Lindsay Bartels, and I am over in Sydney, and my creative practice is writing. And this is a relatively new chapter for me.
Ah,
My previous creative endeavors were filmmaking and digital advertising, and I also did some interior design and drawings. And then had some children and was away from the workforce in that capacity for a while and came to writing, and I love it.
mm. So
Mm,
you it sounds like you've had a fairly creative career the
yes.
whole way. Uh, are you still doing any of that other creative work, or is it now just writing is your thing? Or not just writing, but
Yeah, no.
only writing.
Totally fair question. I found once I had children that for the clients that I had, this was when I was living in San Francisco, they wanted all or nothing. There was a lot of me required for that creative endeavor, um, hand holding, if you will, for those projects. And my kids needed more of the hand holding. So that got released. And there are different regulations to keep up with, and especially overseas and in Australia now that I just haven't kept up with. So I focus on the writing, and then Instagram is my video creative outlet. So where I get to kind of tap into my editing skills, even though they're not the sharpest, they're super fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I always find it interesting the
Hmm.
other kind of creative things that people
Yeah.
do because I think none of us are just creative in one way. Like we are doing other creative things as well. So
I
I
know
love
some
that.
people, it's like cooking or taking care of plants and all those things. And I don't do those things. So I just noticed your plants in the background. They're so beautiful.
Yeah, I do love my plants, and
Mm.
it's so exciting to have come home and they're all alive. Actually, no, one plant did die, but anyway,
Yes.
2 months away. That's what happens.
Yes.
Um, and I love that, you're creating Instagram Reels is a creative pursuit because I also love doing things like that. And I think
Hmm.
it is part of that creative element. You get to play with it and have fun with it. And for those who are dissing things like the social media, like it is actually so much fun to make a fun reel. Can you
Or
tell me?
get, sorry to cut you off, but just
Yeah.
to get like captivated by Canva. I know a lot of writers who do that, and what they create is amazing. So, yes, they go hand in hand. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah,
Please.
no, no, no.
Yes.
You feel free to cut me off.
No.
Canva, for those who have not used Canva, and are frightened of doing any kind of graphic design work, Canva is so user friendly.
Very.
Much more than, Adobe,
Hmm.
in the old
Hmm.
days.
Exactly. It's all like so easy now to get rid of a background with a push of a button, where we used to have to like cut it out by hand almost.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Gosh, yeah. It's giving me a bit of kind of trauma
Sorry.
remembering all of that.
Yes. Writing. Yes, writing is the now, and it's lovely.
Yeah,
Mm.
excellent. Can you tell me, do you have like I know your book has actually just come out this week
Yes.
and I mean this episode will be coming out a few weeks after our recording of it, but it's exciting time for you and I'm sure that this week feels extraordinary compared to other weeks. Uh, but do you have a routine for your writing? And has it changed since the book is now published?
Yes. Yes, and yes. It is an ever evolving routine. It is not a set in stone routine. And I recently came across an article from Anne Patchett because she just released Whistler about how she says in the beginning of a project, she just writes a little bit and will think about it for a little bit. And then once she gets in a groove, it's more consuming and she'll just write and write. And I was starting a fiction story with a Faber writing class in person in Sydney, which was fantastic while I was waiting for edits on my memoir just to keep me in the zone, in the practice, and not freaking out.
Mm.
And while I was doing that, I found if I just held myself lightly to an expectation, it allowed more creativity to come through and to flow. And that was such a friendly feeling. I really appreciate that I'm not on a deadline for this new endeavor. And when writing my memoir, that was the first time I'd done something long form with the goal of 70,000 words for a first draft. And I think I got to 85, but I wrote it by hand using four different notebooks that were 100 pages each. And I was just very um, pragmatic about it and scheduling, like, if I want to finish this notebook by this day, I need to write this many pages. But that was easier because it was a story I knew. Like having the memoir in mind, I had the structure. And for something that I'm creating and making up, I find the routine, perhaps just committing to setting aside a couple hours a day to just be with it and think of the story, helps to keep it building momentum. There's no
Mm.
momentum right now. It's tabled and it is launch time, and I'm just surrendering.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
I love that. There was something that you said, holding myself lightly. I
Hmm.
That's a beautiful line.
Thank you.
And yeah, I think from speaking with many authors that, this kind of lead up to
Hmm.
launch can feel like a kind of liminal space. And I think it's great that you've had that lovely distraction of,
Hmm.
playing with something of fiction, but also knowing that you need to put it aside and just have that complete focus on the launch.
Hmm.
Tell me, and I'm sure this is probably different between the memoir and writing fiction, but the process that you have for your creative work, so
Hmm.
going from idea
Hmm.
to putting it all together,
Yes.
can you talk me through that
Yes.
process, say for the memoir and for the fiction?
Yes. So I had a very wonderful teacher in the US named Mary Adkins. She has a writer's podcast called The First Draft Club, and that's how I came across her. And she gave me this great advice to start with a big question. Like, what is a big, thorny, kind of ethical question where, as a writer, you're curious about it? So you want to dive deeply and follow that question through, where you're not hitting the nail on the head the whole story, but it's something you're exploring, and the work is always tapping into that question. And that way you can kind of look at the pros and cons and these different perspectives. It just makes a richer story. And for my memoir, I wrote to this question of whether or not I would bring this embryo into being, knowing it had this cancer causing genetic mutation that I had and I had experienced. And it was something that I, as a person, sat with for many years. And once I got to a place in life where I felt complete with that, sitting with the question, I was like, I really want to capture this on the page for others who have a similar experience and want to look at the sides I considered in my experience. Um, so just having that question in mind is kind of how I start, and I very pantsy with what's going to come for the memoir because, like I said, I knew the story. I fit it into a three-act structure where I was like, this is kind of the setup and where I was going. This is where things turned around. Then I hit a low point and I thought what I was thinking in the beginning was totally different. And at the end had a total paradigm shift. So that was a very loose structure. Um, and it all flowed out really easily with that in mind, again, because I knew the story. So with fiction, I'm trying to not plot too much because I've had ideas in the past that didn't take off because I feel like I killed my own vibe by finding all the answers from the get-go. So with this next story I have, it's a little hard to, with the writing program that I'm in any writing program where you have to have feedback as you go. With my memoir, I only had feedback after I'd written the first draft and had read it as a reader and seeing what was confusing and what was working and what maybe I didn't like or liked. And I felt confident with it before I passed it to beta readers or people that were willing to give me feedback. But for my fiction, I'm very selective to share like maybe little bits and bobs that I know I like and would like to talk to, but it can be very derailing to have someone say in that early process, I don't understand that, or why is your character doing that, and why did you choose this? When I don't know those answers yet until I get further into the story. Um, and I think just as writers, we're sensitive. And so it's a balance, like protecting myself from that, but also being good and open and sharing the work to build that muscle for feedback too, and being able to offer that to my peers. Because I do think that is important, but maybe in bigger chunks later on in the process.
That is all so interesting, and I love the process that you had for the memoir of,
Yeah.
starting with that question,
Mm-hmm.
and because it is actually something that I talk through with a lot of writers about, what is the question your story is trying to answer.
Mm-hmm.
Are you holding a question for this fiction as well?
Yes, I
Yes.
am. I
And
am.
you
But it
started
does
with,
kind of change because it's like a made up story. So as I write it and I'm writing towards this question, I'm kind of like, well, now do I want to answer a different question? Or is that really the question I want to answer that I thought I wanted to answer? Or is this the lead to something deeper or something more complex than I didn't initially think? So I'm still in the first draft,
yeah,
if you
and
can't tell.
sometimes I think, we don't
Yeah.
know what that question is until we get to the end of that first draft to go,
Hmm.
now I know what it is that I'm actually trying to answer.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm also curious about that, the sharing of your work in this early
Hmm.
stage. And, I found this, I went through the RMIT program in Melbourne,
Hmm.
and we shared a lot, like an awful
Yeah.
lot. And sometimes that complicated the the understanding of what you're trying to write, because you've got, say 20 people giving you feedback
Hmm.
on something. Do you feel like it is uh I don't want to kind of put you off with
That's
this, but
totally fine.
yeah, like,
Yes.
are you finding that sharing it is potentially not so helpful at this stage for this project?
Yes. But I do feel like at the same time, it's good experience because it's helping me know what works best for me and what doesn't. So, what I love about being in community with other writers is having people to just talk with. Like, it's just so nice to not write in isolation and to have other people as accountability partners almost, and just say, I'm going to work on this right now, or I have this question, and maybe being conversation partners, not necessarily um, writing and reading your writing. Although, if I do get to a place where I feel really good about something I've shared and I have maybe two, like we had some bigger group discussions in this course I was doing. It's finished, the fiction course, which was great timing. But when there's bigger things to share, it is hard to take in like 12 different people's opinions. It's nice to hear if something's not working from like three different people. But then at the same time, I feel like I have to set that aside. And this is what I'm doing. I'm setting it aside and seeing if it filters in subconsciously, or I can revisit it later. Because if I take it to heart, I won't continue. I just don't want it to be a barrier for me. Like, it's so important, I think, to just listen to your own voice in the beginning and believe in where those kind of whispers and weird places take you. And sometimes I get too excited and I'm like, oh, I want to share this kind of crazy weird place I went, and someone might be like, that's too weird, or I don't get it, and then you kind of are like deflated, or you can be. And So I'm just cautious of that so that the writing can flow and can come, and sharing maybe, like I was saying, with maybe two people that you know and trust their opinion and they know your work a little better and just are more on the encouraging side at the early stages, then that kind of fuels you to keep going.
Yeah, I actually think that's such great advice for writers is having, you don't need many
Yeah.
people to get feedback from, but if you've got a few people, even two people or one
Mhm.
person who you can really trust with the feedback, but will also encourage you, because in that early stage, what writers need, what creators need is encouragement when we're
Mhm.
trying to like bring a world, create a world,
Yeah.
create an imaginary world. Um, and just to keep going. I think that's potentially the best advice any writer needs to hear is keep going. Just
Yeah,
keep
keep
working.
going. And then there will be a time and place to get that feedback where it is really helpful if somebody isn't picking up on what you're laying down, kind of, right? If you're like, "Oh, that's what you interpreted from what I wrote, that's not what I meant." So that's helpful advice
Mm.
to make it clearer, kind of a thing.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
also think it can be really helpful for when you are seeking feedback to be really specific about what you're wanting the feedback on. I'm not wanting a
Hmm.
copy edit on this.
Yes.
I want to know, like, does this scene work? Or
Yeah.
what do you feel is missing? Or, and then I think it also helps for the person who's giving you feedback to know what to look out for as well, rather than
Definitely.
coming in with a red pen on a first draft. Please don't.
Yes, yes, yes. So same that one teacher. So Mary Adkins had an online program that I did with the memoir, and she was just like, anyone can get a hammer and find a nail, and that's like mostly not what you're looking for when you're getting those first rounds of feedback because you want it to feel alive and flexible and malleable still. So
Mm,
yeah, having the parameters from whoever's work it is very helpful to know how to be best helpful.
mm.
Mm.
Tell me, where do you get your inspiration from? I mean, obviously the memoir is a memoir, so you got the inspiration from your own life and thought this is a interesting thing that I think other people might want to know about. But for your fiction, um, and maybe for the work that you've done before, where do you get your inspiration from?
So it's still from life and from experiences that I have and want to capture or really wonder why it's niggling at me so much, or if it's a question I have, even just a little question of an interaction. I'm like, why did that interaction stick with me? Why can't I shake it? Or why am I still turning it over in my head? Those kind of experiences in life are the ones I want to capture on the page. And for my memoir, I really look to other memoirists whose work felt very deep and meaningful to me. And I have a book I'm going to show you. This one is called Hereafter by Amy Lynn. And sorry, I have my fuzzy
Yep,
thing
beautiful.
on. And it's very succinct and told in vignettes. And it's about her experience after her husband died when she was quite young in her 30s, newly married. But it's so beautiful. And every word has weight almost. And it's quick and you don't need all the details of her life. You don't need her whole exposition of when she grew up, and that's kind of what I love as a reader, and I wanted to have that in my memoir as well. So my memoir isn't big, it's small, and I just wanted it to have um just a weight to it that was significant but not heavy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I do look to other writers for inspiration in my writing. And now with the fiction, I basically want to cull feelings and experiences from my real life, but not have to tell my real life anymore. Like it's a lot of like motherhood stuff and kids, and I just don't want to throw my kids under the bus, and or the other experiences I have. So fictionalizing it and changing it into these characters just takes the edge off for me, and I think for a reader too, because I can add more elements to it that maybe are unrealistic and lovely, which is fun.
Mm. Well, you get to turn the dial up and,
Yeah,
have fun with it.
have fun. Yes.
Yeah. Tell me, if you were to be chatting with someone who is thinking about getting into writing or filmmaking or graphic design or
Mm.
making reels, um, what what wisdom would you want to share with them?
I would say just keep your curiosity sparked and have a beginner mindset. I think I love learning. Like that's something that's just innate in me, and I never think I'm the best. And um, I try to encourage that for my children too, to just lean on others and ask for their wisdom and don't be embarrassed to be a newbie at these things, because especially other people want to help and to share, and especially when you come at it with a curious mindset, it's fun to learn from others, and then you get the connection too, which helps fuel you to learn and to get better. And I find I'm still learning and getting better in everything I learn. It's sometimes hard, but it's exciting and it keeps it fun and dynamic. Um, but you've got to be the one to fuel it. And that's why if it's something that you love, it should come pretty easily to keep going and to just lose track of time because you're enjoying that process, I think.
Mm. Can you tell me, how do you refill your creative cup?
Mm. Yeah, just live more life, just have more experiences. And I just remember when I was younger, I did always love to kind of blog and write a little and capture experiences along the way as a way to just be creative on the side. And I had someone in my 20s tell me, you can't write a memoir. And I'd lived different places. I'd moved kind of interstate on my own, packed up my car, and had this new experience. And I didn't like that advice. I don't think that's very nice, because there's always something you can write about from your life, or from fictionalizing something that you know that's a story that you love or enjoyed and just want to share with others and remember. And so I kind of now forgot what the question was in the beginning, but
How do you
yeah.
refill
Oh
your
yeah,
creative
just by
cup?
living and doing things that make me come alive, and living outside my comfort zone in a way that is interesting to me. Like not because someone else says so, but because I'm like excited to try it, I guess.
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Hmm.
What what feels like home for you and your creative work?
That's so nice. I love home. I'm a homebody. My star sign is Cancer, and books. Books feel like home. I feel like home is where the books are. So, I've moved overseas a few times, and I just always miss my books that are in the US, and I accumulate way too many books here, but even if I don't read them all, they are very comforting, and that's why I think going into bookstores are so lovely, and I'm so glad they're still around. And libraries. Libraries
Mm.
are lovely, but they feel for some reason less homey with the fluorescent lights. That's all.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Improve the lighting.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for coming on to this podcast. I will, of course, have links to your book and the books that you've talked about
Oh, thank
in
you.
the show notes. And yeah, thank you for coming on and sharing about your creative work.